So you're like a child that's wandered in the movie theater halfway through and you're wondering what's going on? This is Donny Cast on the 18th of July, 22. And I am your host, Walter, on the good line, the greater good. So it's Monday, and Mondays are everybody's favorite day of the week. So let's get depressed together. And I'm sure that my co-host and his wife are going to tell me stop saying that. So the main news, this is not the main news. So if you weren't aware, the Uvalde police response report to the shooting that they had at Robb Elementary School has come out. It's just a scathing indictment of, well, how systems function with more bureaucracy. So the report just basically had 400 cops arrived on scene during the 77 minutes of inactivity. The alert system that they had in Uvalde for lockdowns was basically ignored because they had such a high rate of being issued due to the border patrol response in the area because of the illegal trafficking. The school knew about faulty locks, and I guess the actual administrators or staff didn't do anything about them. Uh, let's see, what else did we have? There were the warning signs of the shooter. All this stuff is going on. I still have questions about the whys of what was going on in the hallway and with the actual law enforcement response that has not been actually answered because, again, there isn't a good way to explain how you were a coward, why you had to wait for someone to give you the word to go in and do your fucking job. Um, so I still don't know, but I just want to talk about this a little bit in case people were wondering. I'm kind of decided that Uvalde is just going to make me more and more depressed, so I'm going to leave that at alone. I want to get to other conversations that I think have more value, not from the actual headlines, but what I would take as the lesson from them. So to continue on with why we're where we're going to get to today. So over the weekend, I think it was yesterday, we had a gunman kill 3 in Indiana Mall before being fatally shot by an armed bystander. Mind you, this is this is being printed by USA Today, which is far left, and they're got their own bent to it. So in this case, there's not a lot of details that are coming out, which at the very least is good, because again, if you want the mass shootings to continue, then give them all the attention that they want. If you want them to go away, then shame them and forget about them. So in this case, we had this mass shooting that was initiated. Someone with a concealed weapons permit engaged the active shooter and took him down. This is already being politicized. It's going to get memory hold. In this case, certain people are making the concealed weapons carry holder a hero, and they're not a hero. You shouldn't be praised for doing something that you're supposed to do, just like you shouldn't be vilified for doing what's necessary. If we don't have a culture that's worth saving, then at this point, like, why would you ask anybody, including a cop, to act? And in this case, like, a concealed weapons carry permit holder doesn't need to act as a hero. He just has to act in his own self-interest of protecting himself and his own loved ones. He doesn't have to worry about strangers. It's just the added benefit of if people had concern for their culture, if they had concern for themselves and other people that they care about, then their culture, that culture that got them to that place, would have value, and they would have a duty to react, instead of like cowering in a hallway. So, like I said, at the end of the day, the lesson from this is: do you want to wait on someone, the government, to help you, or do you want to help yourself? If I were all Christianity-ish, man, and I had something to say about it, I'd say something along the lines like, if you give a man a fish, he eats for a day. If you teach a man to fish, blah blah blah. The idea behind this is, if you give a man security, he doesn't have to worry about the active shooter. If you give a man a gun, then he can do something about the active shooter, right? Because the man who is given a fish, he returns to the person who gives him a fish the next day, and has no incentive to do anything to protect himself. So to go on from that, I know as I'm already butchering this today, on a Monday, we have Georgia's school system is Georgia's school system to let some non-officers carry guns. So this thing I have, Georgia's second largest school district has approved a policy that lets some employees who aren't certified police officers carry guns in schools. I have to be clear on this when I talk about this is I don't like the idea of arming teachers or militarizing schools. I don't think that's the solution. But that's not the actual issue. And both Democrats and Republicans are being, I have written fucking stupid, but I've been told to watch my cussing. That's not the actual that's not the actual issue. And Democrats and Republicans are either purposely or just so obtuse that they can't see around it. The question is, are they? Well, I have to omit my cussing. The question at the end of the day is, are they doing it on purpose, or are they just that ignorant? If you can imagine the F-bombs and the stupids that I was calling them. At the end of the day, this should be an issue of, should you as an individual have the right to protect yourself? And that right to protect yourself shouldn't end when if you work at a school. It just shouldn't. Because at the end of the day, it should be your choice and the choice of the school board. If the school board wants to come out and say that their teachers and their employees can't have concealed weapons or guns on campus in the first place, it gives you the opportunity as both a parent and as a potential employee to go, this may not be the school district for me, if it's that important to you. But at the end of the day, just carte blanche saying that we just don't do that really moves the burden of who's responsible for these things around. And like I said, as I cut off the screen, I'll let you stare at Belushi instead. The idea behind this is, I would like the right to protect myself, and by proxy, I would end up protecting the shared children of our culture, because I just am exercising my right to potentially be able to protect myself. And that's a big issue. If you're allowing teachers the ability to influence our future via our youth, why aren't you at least exploring the idea that if they wish to protect themselves, they might end up protecting your children in the process? It's an odd idea. So we're just going to say, like, because guns are bad in certain people's minds, like, would you have a problem with a shop teacher bringing a power drill to class? Because a power drill at the end of the day is a tool. So if you trust the shop teacher to bring a power drill, why wouldn't you trust another teacher to bring a gun? The gun being a tool for self-defense in this case. They're not bringing nuclear weapon systems to your classroom to expose your children to radiation. We're just saying, hey, maybe if the government wasn't involved with this process, an individual can make up their mind, I would like to protect myself. And then at the end of the day, that might have certain consequences down the line that we wouldn't necessarily say this is a hero or a villain. It's just like the necessity of, where do I live? What is my background? Do I think this is necessary? And if a teacher from San Francisco is like, I don't think it's necessary, then San Francisco as a school district can go, none of our teachers decide to carry guns to school. And again, I'm not advocating for this. That's not the point of this. It's not for me to say, like, I think teachers should bring guns to school. But I'm saying, as an individual, should individuals have the right to protect themselves? And if your answer is no, then obviously you don't. Why would it matter what you do to protect schools? Individuals don't have the right to protect themselves. If your answer is yes, why are you stopping that at teachers being able to, like anybody else, be able to protect themselves when they feel they're in danger? That's the actual bigger problem behind this, because this is a power issue. And let's see. Like I said, from my notes, you should have the right to protect yourself, and that shouldn't end at the school. In the end, it's your choice and the choice of the school board, because you can move around. And if you don't like it, you should have the right to either move out of that school district, or take your tax dollars, and this is important, take your tax dollars and take your kid someplace else. And that works both ways. It's funny how we're not discussing that. That actually works both ways, because if you live in a school district that allows teachers and other employees to arm themselves at schools, and you don't like that, shouldn't you be able to take your tax dollars someplace else? Just like if you live in a school district where they allow it to occur, or they don't allow it to occur, you should be able to take your tax dollars and go someplace else where you feel like they're going to put your child's safety in front of other issues like indoctrinating children's. And this goes back to, all those rights that were supposedly taught in our civics classes. Some people don't have civics classes anymore. We took them, or the government took them, and you never even knew or care that it occurred, right? Like just the small freedom of, how can I protect myself? If my only option is to cower and wait for someone to come save me, that is my option. That the country that I live in that is my option, versus my other option is I can do something about it. And supposedly the shared culture that we're supposed to have in this country is, I'm supposed to have the choice. I can either cower and wait for someone to bring me a fishing pole, or I can bring the fishing pole with me and I can do something about it. That is supposed to be the actual crux. No one is saying you have to carry a gun. What the actual argument should be is, why is the government removing that choice? And this isn't necessarily even a gun issue. This is a school issue. Why is the government removing your ability to have choice over your child's education? And if you don't see the line between your ability to carry a gun and your ability to not have control over your child's education, well, I don't know what to tell you, because at this point you're probably a lost cause. So and I've been told not to say that stuff before too. Actually, it probably was me that was saying don't say that stuff. So moving on to kind of hammer home what I was talking about. This is an opinion piece. I looked up this Mary Catherine Ham. She is supposedly a conservative, but she tends to work for a lot of left-leaning organizations like the Daily Beast. She also has CNN in her Twitter bio. This piece says teachers' unions are why more parents want school choice, and I would agree that parents that are aware of what's going on, that they would probably see it that way. So in this case, we have, as I point out, the Daily Beast is left-leaning. The author tends to, I already said all this stuff, so it just shows to show how good I am at my notes sometimes. So in this article, it says the head of the United Teachers Los Angeles, Cicely something or other Cruz, there's no such thing as learning loss. She said she told Los Angeles magazine, it's okay that our babies may not have learned all their timetables. They learn resilience, they learn survival, they learn critical thinking skills. They know the difference between a riot and a protest. They know the words insurrection and coup. So again, we have right here that the head of the United Teachers of Los Angeles, this is how she views the world. This is the person that is pushing down, how shall we put this, protocol to the teachers that are teaching children. This is how she views the world. To continue in this op-ed, this opinion piece, we have Los Angeles Unified School District reported losing more than 27,000 students from enrollment numbers during the 2021 school year. A 2021 Census Bureau survey showed homeschooling numbers jumped 3% of U.S. students in spring 2020 to a whopping 11% in 2021, with gains across all ethnic groups. Black parents in particular chose homeschooling more often, with proportion of homeschoolers in their demographic increasing 5-year-olds. And again, this isn't even an issue of our children's education or school safety. This is an issue of power, right? This is the ability for other people to tell you about security and about education, because they don't care, because as long as they have the ability to control your security and the direction of the next generation of potential, how shall we put this, they're not voting blocks. It's the narrative, the need to control a narrative, because you don't have to control the voting block when you already have that everybody thinks the same way. There's no diversity of thought going on. And there, I have other stories that I'm prepping for tomorrow, talking about like a certain, shall we, I should stop saying shall we, but the I believe it's an op-ed about the damage that the 1619 project has done to the U.S. And there's a movie coming out called the Woman Queen that's has some particular ideological interest. But again, like going back to the idea of the schools, when we have certain minority groups that don't have the option to take their children other places and get the education that they want, because they're basically being just segregated by proxy of the teachers unions and the government not allowing them to do other things by having the choice of where their children go to school, or being able to take their tax dollars, or at least taking other people's tax dollars and going to what other independent school systems that's going on. I mean, this is probably even worse than lacking the security of their children. This is just the ability that like they don't have any option to have their children have a better life than they did, because there's no other options to deal with this problem, because that lack of freedom that no one even realized that they would have had, right? The ability to invest within your culture, like, it's been taken away. It doesn't matter, because if you don't have choice, there's no actual culture. It's let's see, I was going to say for lack of a better way to put it, but for lack of a better way to put it, it's just slavery by a different name at this point. So why we're talking about, like, Second Amendment and school choice and all that good stuff going into today on a Monday, to just to get things started for the week. We actually have Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband over the weekend buys $1 million worth of computer chip stock weeks before a vote on industry subsidies. I actually think they changed this title, because I believe the vote was supposed to go on tomorrow. So anyway, in this article, it says Paul Pelosi, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband made a stock purchase of over 1 million in computer chip company just weeks before a potential vote in Congress, which would give a massive subsidy to the industry. Mind you, this is all legal. Nothing wrong here. Nothing to see here. So I have another article. I probably already had it pulled up. It just goes to show how awesome I'm going on this Monday. I hope you feel kind of Monday too. So Paul Pelosi bets big on Nvidia stock ahead of CHIPS Act. That's the biggest two things I was looking at. Like, what did he buy, and what is the name of the legislation? So the legislation is the CHIPS Act. This is from a .gov site. The CHIPS Act is let's see, where is it? Joe Biden's American jobs plans call for $50 billion over 5 years to fund this set of programs, and Congress is considering legislation with similar funding levels over the same time. Roughly $40 billion would be directed towards the construction and modernization of U.S. facilities for semiconductor fabrication, assembly, testing, advanced packaging, and R&D. Funding would be applied to supporting multiple market segments and meet the semiconductor needs for crucial sectors, Freudian right there, including both commercial requirements as well as those of the Department of Defense and broader intelligence community. Another $10 billion would support critical research and development and infrastructure investments to help protect and extend U.S. technology leaderships, including, mind you, all I have to say, this is again a problem the government's created, and it's looking to solve a problem they're caused. And it makes it worse, because they're just spending more money to get them spending taxpayer money during a period of heightened inflation and economic downturn to solve this problem, which I'm sure in no way, shape, or form will involve more inflation and more embezzlement of funds, because again, we don't know. So what has occurred because of government regulation and taxation is things like microchip or semiconductor tiny electronics devices based primarily on silicon and germanium are the fundamentals to nearly all modern industrial national securities activities. So we talked a couple of weeks ago about California taxing lithium out of the state of California, lithium mining out of the state of California. Again, if the government keeps its snout out of things, there's less of a chance that something like the chip production would have been outsourced out of the country. So now you got into the point where we have a chip shortage going on in the country, and the government has to come through and figure out a way how to subsidize more chips being created and the innovation behind new chips being created in the country, which is a problem that if you hadn't taxed and regulated the industry in the first place, you wouldn't have to come back and solve when we have a dearth of chips in the country, if that makes sense. So government solving a problem that they already created, because again, like, would you rather have someone give you a microchip, or would you have someone teach you how to make a microchip so you can make new ones? And in this case, the government is saying, well, we're going to subsidize this market so we can create more chips because we taxed it and regulated it to the point where it left. They're giving your fishing pole back to you if you don't understand that analogy. Because I'm kind of like that. So who is good old Nancy Pelosi, and what district does she represent? Well, we all know that she's a horrible human being. She represents California's 12th congressional district, which is entirely within San Francisco, encompassing most of the city. The remainder of the city is included in the 14th district. So I bring this up because this is the type of people that her district give a fuck about. Like it ain't got nothing to do with virtue. Just keep electing someone like her over and over again. Someone that her husband would just go out and go, oh, I know about this. I'm going to make this stock trade. And this is something that continues to go on, and it's legal. It just has nothing to do with the morality of it, because, even if it wasn't legal, you would think someone that has investment in their culture would go like, well, I probably shouldn't do this because like, it's just wrong. It doesn't matter if it's legally wrong. It's just wrong. But the city of San Francisco elect someone like Nancy Pelosi to represent them, because this is the type of people that live in San Francisco, right? She's literally representing the moral values of a city like San Francisco. It's just corruption and incompetence. That is what San Francisco is. They have elected Nancy Pelosi to be her national avatar, or to be their national avatar. These are the type of people that want to tell you how, or these are the type of people who are teaching your kids in public education systems the things that they would teach their own kids. So they're just using their ability to weasel their way into political power to force you to teach your kids the same thing that they're teaching their kids. And in this case, it's just massive levels of corruption and incompetence. It doesn't matter. There isn't legally a law that says that I can't buy stocks that I know my wife is going to be voting on. Which means it's okay, because since it's not legally wrong, that means the moral implications of it don't fucking matter either. And just to give you a better idea of what's going on in San Francisco, Nancy Pelosi's district, the type of people that are representing teachers unions and that are actively trying to take not just your right to defend yourself away. They've been slowly but surely chipping away at it for years, to the point where you didn't even realize why it matters. Why you shouldn't have to, cower behind a table or have your children be afraid for themselves, because if someone has else decided to put value in their own safety, then maybe they might decide to put value into your child's safety at the same time. So if you weren't aware, the district attorney of San Francisco was recalled. He was, I shit you not, the son of bank robbers. He was the district attorney in San Francisco. He got recalled because even San Francisco is saying we're tired of this shit. His replacement that was appointed by whatever her stupid name was, it's Brooke Jensen's the name of the new district attorney. She was appointed by Mayor London Breed, who is a former secretary in the mayor's office, because it doesn't matter what goes on. No one cares about the culture of San Francisco, it appears. So anyway, in this article, it says staffers present at a 20-minute sit-down left the meeting and immediately began shaming their new boss to press, telling San Francisco Gate in a story published that same day that the meeting was horrible, icy, uncomfortable, and even worse. So what did good old what's her face Brooke Jenkins decided to do in response to sitting down with the staff of the prior attorney general who was fucking fired by democratic means. Well, they turned around, they sold her out to the media, and then she said, I wasn't going to fire you guys, and then she had to respond by fucking firing them. That's what occurred. And here the idea, to me at the very least, is the absolute infection in our institutions. She couldn't sit down and go, hey, we have a shared culture, we're playing the same game, we should be able to work together to do such things as have like effective law enforcement or in our cities. No, the staff was like, we don't like you. We were brought in by the previous guy who was so bad that the city of San Francisco kicked him out of office. We're going to talk shit about you behind your back to the point where you have to fire us. And again, what Brooke Jenkins was or wasn't going to do becomes irrelevant when, because of the staff leaks, it's a pretty good indication that what she was working with was so broken that she couldn't go try and do anything involving the trust of the public at this point. So she had to just get them. If, as I pointed out before, if you're not playing by the same rules, you're not playing the same game. And the staff that she had before she fired thought it was appropriate to go leaking shit to the press. When the point of the meeting was supposedly, I ain't gonna fire you guys. She continues, I promised the public that I would restore accountability and consequence to the criminal justice system while advancing smart reforms responsibly. Jenkins' statement read, again, you get the culture that you deserve. You get the government you deserve. Obviously, San Francisco likes the culture of Nancy Pelosi, but in this case with Jenkins, at least she is bringing a certain amount of consequences back to the Attorney General's office of San Francisco, because you do something like break the trust. It may not be illegal, but there is a moral standpoint to it by leaking stuff, the confidence of your boss. And then there's a consequence to it. She's literally already bringing back accountability and consequence to the office by saying, don't do this stuff. And it remains to be seen that whether or not San Francisco will have a functioning district attorney. I'm not going to go hold my breath about it, but like the next step, city of San Francisco, I mean, you've gotten rid of woke school boards. You got rid of a woke district attorney. I would go and say, hey, you might want to get rid of a corrupt, House representative. That's just me. You do whatever you want, San Francisco. But I'm pretty sure you like being told what to do and seeing how that's working out with you when there's literal apps to tell people where human shit is on the sidewalks of San Francisco. So to go further about, just to give you an idea about how the state functions and what corruption is on a broad term, Zelensky, the El Presidente of Ukraine, well, he had to remove remove the security head of Ukraine and the top prosecutor in high-level shakeup. And it has in here that the chick who was the female of the nation's first female prosecutor general, it's like Vendit Kotiva, whatever. It's not, I can't hardly speak English, so who cares? She was profiled in several prominent U.S. news outlets for her prosecution of alleged Russian atrocities. She told Washington Post columnist David whatever in late May that her office had more than 13,000 war crime cases on Russian atrocities, including civilian killings, rape, torture. She has faced criticism from some Ukrainians who have said that she has not achieved sufficient results in high-profile anti-corruption cases. The female former prosecutor succeeded former prosecutor general other guy, Rai Obus, whatever. I'm not even going to try. Who was fired by Zelensky. Zelensky said he fired the previous guy who failed to produce results. In 2020, Zelensky said another person would be hired if the female prosecutor also could not yield results. So I'm just like, what are the results that Zelensky thought were supposed to happen from this office? Mind you, Ukraine already has, it's not just a reputation, it's been codified by the EU and NATO as one of the most corrupt countries in the world. That's why they were told in order to actually get EU and NATO membership, you have to knock off some of this corrupt practices that you have going on. So you have these prosecutors, the top prosecutors of Ukraine, and it's like, well, what do they need to do to not be corrupt? It seems like you're either replacing more and more corruption with more and more corruption, or they're not doing what you're supposed to do, which means they are corrupt. They're just not corrupt in the way that you need them to be. I don't know which one this is, or they're not corrupt and they're not being not corrupt enough, which means you need to get rid of them and bring someone else that'll follow what you need to tell them. So the other guy, who was the head of the security service in Ukraine, well, it just so happens that he was a childhood friend of Zelensky. He ran Zelensky's presidential campaign before that, and Zelensky's entertainment company before that. The Ukrainian opposition parties, which are now banned in Ukraine, criticized his appointment, saying he was not qualified to lead the security services. Bananoff, I believe is his name, has a background in law and economics, according to his agency biography, which doesn't mean anything. So again, these are just issues of the corruption that are going on in Ukraine. To me, this is further evidence that Russia had, in some capacity, a point when they invaded the Ukraine, and that the EU and NATO aren't really backing the right horse. Because, like I said before, there isn't an actual right horse to back here. The West should be staying the fuck out of it. Now, how we bring this all around in a circle is the heavy levels of corruption that are plaguing Ukraine. You ain't getting any justice going on in the Ukrainian justice system, nor are you probably getting any type of security. So at the end of the day, do you want a government that is either openly corrupt or hiding the fact that they're corrupt, or it doesn't matter if they're corrupt or not, because the law doesn't say it's illegal, it just looks morally bad? Or would you rather have the ability yourself to have your own safety literally on your hip, and have the ability to have your own money and send your own kids to the education system that you believe will have their physical welfare at heart and their long-term prospects for prosperity at heart? I don't know. That's up to you. You can make up your own mind, but at this point, at least the head of the Los Angeles school or teachers union, her kids know the difference between a coup and an insurrection at this point. I'm sure in Ukraine, those prosecutors and those security officials know the difference between a coup and a insurrection also, because the U.S. financed the coup of the current political administration in the Ukraine. Can't make this shit up. So let's see. Moving on to other news of the day involving the good news fairy for once, to a certain extent. So we have child endangerment, Florida preparing to charge parents who pay smugglers to bring their kids to the U.S. And again, with that idea of security, so I can empathize with parents from third world countries wanting to have the best potential future for their children, so they hire human smugglers to get their kids to the U.S. I can empathize with that to a certain degree, right? In this article, it says specifically, I believe they're talking about DeSantis. Specifically, he seeks to prosecute for child endangerment parents who use transnational criminal organizations to smuggle their unaccompanied alien children in the United States, right? Narco drug cartels. And this is great stuff by DeSantis, because it's an end run around the federal government's failure to do their job of securing the border. And this isn't just a failure of the Biden administration. This is bipartisan. This goes back decades. If DeSantis is successful, he's started up, I believe, grand juries to start, looking into the investigation behind this. If he's successful, it would make Florida less than desirable landing spot for illegal immigration, especially for those parents that are paying these human smugglers to bring their children to, because then by proxy, the parents would be like, even if I'm in the country of origin, I would be committing a law in Florida, or breaking a felony law in Florida, which means if I ever show up, I should never show up to Florida. Or you get to the point where, like, is a state like Florida going to start seeking to prosecute foreign nationals on foreign soil for basically paying to have their children put into human smuggling operations? And just in case you were unaware, like, some of these parents, they don't have their children's best interest at heart. There's a monetary value for children, and it's just like, here, my child has value. I'll just sell them. I don't really care. So it's not just like bleeding heart parents that are trying to get their kids over there. So the author of this is Nolan Rappaport. He's an immigration lawyer. He's kind of a piece of shit. If you didn't realize that he was a piece of shit from being a lawyer, he's also an immigration lawyer that's basically looking to undermine, the U.S. How can I say this? You wonder. How can I take this labeled opinion piece and say that this guy's a piece of shit? Well, he works for Huffington Post, which is far left trash. And in this, as this thing pops up, Texas driving school, Nolan Rappaport was detailed the White House Judiciary Committee as an executive branch immigration law expert for 3 years. He subsequently served as an immigration counsel for subcommittee on. So he's just a swamp creature that views the world the way that he views the world, which is there isn't an immigrant that he's ever seen that doesn't deserve some type of representation, which I can honestly say that I empathize with. So here we got Nolan Rappaport, opinion editorials, the likes of The Hill. He's purely left leaning. The Hill, Real Clear Politics are both left leaning. Huffington Post is left leaning. His actual ideological lens is from the left when he writes this article, and even in this article, he wrote that presumably parents who use smugglers to bring their children here from Central America think that their children face more dangers in Central America than they would on their journey to the United States in the care of smugglers. That's a fucking loaded question, because of the fact that, like, if we're under the context that the United States is a safer fucking country than all these Central American countries are, there's a problem right there. That why are you making it seem like we have security problems in the United States where the parents would rather give their children to strangers and risk sending their children to the U.S. with these problem of security at elementary schools? Because I guess these Central American countries must have death squads and stuff like that going on to turn their kids over. So we don't actually have a security problem in the U.S. relative to the arguments of these parents, right? And he actually goes, would it be acceptable as a defense to criminal child endangerment charges under the Florida law? He goes, I doubt it. So again, he's saying, would the parents saying it's more dangerous in these Central American countries that are shitholes, would it be that's not a defense to turn over their children to human smugglers? That's not, and this is an immigration lawyer saying that, and as he continues, he's not an immigration or he's an immigration lawyer. He's not a criminal lawyer. And again, if you're wondering if there's a case behind this, it gets the question is probably not, because again, the best that you're looking at is an argument that, like, my house is on fire and I'm going to turn over my child to at best a stranger and at worst human sex traffickers, drug dealers, and criminals. Like, the fire needs to be pretty fucking bad in your home country to even try and use that as a defense. I am sure, however, he continues, that the effectiveness of a defense would depend on the circumstances in each case, which brings up the actual laws that are standing when it comes to asking for, God, what's the word? I'm drawing a blank because I have stage fright, but it's the ability to ask for shelter within another country because of the persecution that's going on in your country. In this case, like that's what he's saying, that would depend on the actual case, which brings up the actual, is there no other option that you have than getting them to the U.S.? So would someone from, say, Guatemala have the only argument to say that I am paying human smugglers to bring this child to the U.S. instead of the first country that's safe? And he continues, the circumstances would have to be established in criminal proceedings, which would subject the parents to risk of prison sentence if their defense is rejected. So again, this would involve either Florida being able to arrest foreign nationals on foreign soil, which means cooperation with the government of these countries that may or may not be persecuting their people in the first place. And that's going to be a pretty fucking tall order when you think about the fact that you're either asking the country that's persecuting their populace to not turn over this individual for prosecution, or on the other hand, it's basically the government going, oh, we're not safe, huh? When their country is actually safe. So that ends up being kind of a funny thing in the first place. And then even if the parent decides that they're going to follow their child to Florida, they face that prosecution once they get there. It just goes, well, where else should we go in order to not deal with this headache? And at the end of the day, like I said before, this is an end run around Florida saying, federal government, you're not doing your job. How can we get you to do your job? Because you're not going to do it. And I have written, even if it's not going to work well criminally, in this case, it's just going to deter illegal immigration to Florida because of the criminal process that these people would be caught up in. It would turn it into like something like along the lines of a coin flip. Like, do you want to risk the fact that you could be actually convicted of these crimes when you could just go to another state, like say fucking California, and then you don't have to deal with this problem? So Florida is taking their problem and it's throwing it at blue states that are not going to deal with the problem accordingly. And if this works, you'll probably see like something like Texas follow suit and do the same thing and just continue to push this problem to bluer and bluer states because you're stupid. And the other thing that's really interesting from this article that is what they are actually attempting to deal with is there's the larger process behind what DeSantis is doing, and also the larger black market system that isn't even being mentioned, that's taking place behind the scenes of government regulation that, of course, is created by the fact that the government is A, not doing their job, and B, is by proxy of not doing their job creating this black market. Another problem the government causes that they are, of course, trying to fix. So going on from there, we have DC Democrats beg for help as border states bus migrants to Biden's backyard. I was actually watching a video of the mayor of Washington, D.C. begging about this because they say, she said that their homeless shelters are full of migrants that have been bused in. And in this case, it's talking about like the 6.8 million Texas has spent to date. Since mid-April, more than 125 buses have transported 4,800 migrants from the Texas border communities. It's a process called NIMBYism, which is not it's an acronym for not in my backyard type of politics. So in this case, like the mayor of DC is like, I don't care until it gets into my backyard, and then I don't like the fact that we have a government that's not securing our border. It also mentions that they're doing this from Arizona too. So again, this is just ways for these states to either politically get the optics of the problem on a more national level, because again, this 4,800 immigrants is not really doing a lot other than it's causing it to be an issue that Washington, D.C. has to solve at the ballot box. And that's a good thing. So it's good innovation, thinking outside the box, and also at the same time it shows that the government, the federal government, is not doing their job, and it's getting Texas and states like Texas, Arizona, and Florida closer and closer to being more of let's see how to put this. Give a man border enforcement, he will have security for a day. Teach a man how to do border enforcement, he will have border enforcement for a lifetime. In this case, these are things that Texas and Florida should have already had in place to deal with prior to the fact that the federal government hasn't been doing its job for decades, because Texas and Florida and Arizona, states like that, should have already been thinking outside the box to help deal with the problem at the very least. That's at the very least. At most, they should have been making it more efficient for their state by having these things in place. So again, would you rather be cowering behind a table at a mass shooting, or would you rather actively be able to deal with your safety? That's up to you. That's not a decision for me to make. So going forward, to show the absolute bureaucratic state of government, Rutgers is left-wing trash, but in this thing it's talking about West Virginia judge blocks pre-Roe versus Wade abortion ban, and there's some interesting stuff in this. So it says the decision by Kanawha County Circuit Judge Tara Soligo, whatever, I'm butchering stuff today, doesn't matter, clears the way for the state's lone abortion clinic to resume services. She wrote, "It simply does not matter if a pro-choice or pro-life," she said. "Every citizen in the state has a right to clearly know the laws under which they are expected to live." The ruling came hours after a Louisiana judge extended a temporary block on that state from enforcing a so-called trigger law designed to snap into effect if the high court overturned Roe. So I'm not going to say that I agree with the argument, because I haven't read a lot about it, for West Virginia or even Louisiana, because there isn't news on it. But what I will say is I agree with the spirit and the process of what the judge is doing. If lawmakers want to be lazy, you get the conflicting laws on the books because they're too lazy to remove the laws in the first place or to amend them when necessary. Less laws is always good than more laws. So having less of the ability to government to stick its snout into things and just cause problems is always good. In this case, with like Louisiana and West Virginia, if they can't clean up their books after Roe, then they don't know. Then they don't know what to tell you, what to enforce. This is just poor management by officials, elected or otherwise. The Supreme Court decision wouldn't. Let's see. The Supreme Court decision, it isn't just your ability to sit back smugly and say like, "Oh, I've got the outcome that I want." What the Supreme Court decision was is the ability to kick it back to the states, for the states to clean their books, to make up their own minds, and immediately all the states, once the Supreme Court made the decision on Dobbs that overturned Roe, at that point they should have, the legislators should have got together, the governor should have got together, and they should have said, "We need to clean this up. We need to pass the law, the new law that is supported." It doesn't matter if they had trigger laws on the books. It's not an excuse to not do your job and to not go, we're going to get together, we're going to codify this and make it right in the first place with good law. That's the problem. And it's the same thing that was initially talked about in the Roe decision in the first place, is bad law is always bad law. And in this case, just having the government being lazy enough to think that they've already done something without actually having to repeal the laws that they had on the books that were superseded by other laws, causes a judge to come in and say, whether or not ideologically the judge where they stand, they're making the right decision to say like, "Hey, do your fucking jobs and clean these books up." And that's what this judge did at the end of the day. And I have to tend to agree with it. So I think we're getting close to the end today. I had a few other things I was going to talk about at the end that I'm kind of tracking on, just to see if I can get anybody to come back tomorrow as I look at things. So the British Conservative Party leadership race is turning into a transphobic spectacle. If you had any hope that CNN was going to be legitimately a news organization again, nope, they're still trash. I don't know how this has anything to do with transphobia. In this case, like I'll tell you flat out, their argument is having politicians advocate for women's rights makes them transphobic. I can't make this shit up. That's what they're saying. the politician, the front runners for the prime minister of the UK are saying, I want women's rights, which is at odds with being pro-trans, according to this Tara John. Yeah. So if you're wondering why Roe gave women their rights back, there you go. Because it's conflating trans rights with women's rights. And I personally think that women are different and they should have their own different sets of rules when it comes to things like things that men can't do, like, getting pregnant. And my co-host last night, I might have to eventually explain it a little bit better, because I went down the rabbit hole of explaining that actions have consequences, and sometimes you need to return consequences for actions. So there are actually rights to there's value to the rights that you have, and I might eventually have to talk about that. So anyway, moving on to this, so we have these two individuals, a Rishi Sunak and a Penny Mordaunt, are the top two in the race for the UK next prime minister. I don't really know anything about them. I'm pretty sure they're both chummy with the WEF, so that should give you a pretty good idea of what the UK has in store for them. Like I said, I don't know anything about them. I'm not too big in the UK politics. The people that I know that are in UK politics are these are not people that I was aware of before their names really got brought up when it comes to the next prime minister of the UK, and that should be a pretty good indication of how bad these are. Both Tories. That this is how bad the politics in the UK have gotten. Is they're kind of trying to figure out a way to have someone take over for a party that is so incompetent and so impotent that they weren't able to take their clear mandate by the population to run the country conservatively. They fucked it up so bad that Boris Johnson had to resign, and then they have to come up with two people that don't have a track record to really discuss, because they're just flailing at the end of the day. And even though I don't have an opinion on this UK politics stuff yet, UK politics is downstream of US politics. And the big thing to understand is this is a little bit of a canary in the coal mine for what we're going to have in store here in the US. So like I said, a couple other stories I'm kind of working on. There's a Hollywood movie where they're celebrating the actual black slave traders that we're going to talk about probably tomorrow when I read about this a little bit more. And we also have a kind of a developing story on the show Skeletor herself. The Los Angeles County Department of Health official, Barbara Ferrer, who's not actually a doctor, she's going to reinstitute the mask mandate in LA. And based off of numbers that a doctor in LA said, that's not what we're seeing in our hospitals. And then supposedly that the doctor that made that comment, that got yeeted off the internet, because they're like, what the fuck are you doing speaking out against a public health official that has no idea what's going on with health? So I'm hopefully going to have more to say about that tomorrow when I can find it. But anyway, that's your Donny Cast on this Monday. I hope that, I'm probably going to do some thumbnail about her like smoking some money, Pelosi, and just generally not giving a fuck as she burns the country to the ground, because that's the type of politician we deserve. We have Pelosi. Ukraine has Zelensky. Again, you can teach a man, you can give a man security for a day, or you can give a man a gun and have security for a lifetime. So anyway, have yourself a good Monday, and yeah.